Russia is launching new strikes against Ukraine. People are saying that Russia might have used an ICBM.
New strikes against Ukraine overnight. A video appears to show the moment one of the missiles hit the country's fourth largest city. Ukraine says Russia fired 9 missiles and shot down 6 of them. Holly Williams is in the capital of Ukraine, where people are on high alert.
Okay, that's it. Let's go.
As we prepared for a live report yesterday,
Oh, sorry, it's not an ICBM. An intermediate range ballistic missile is what chatters are saying.
air raid alarms sounded over Kyiv and sent us scrambling for cover. The US Embassy in Kyiv had already announced it was closing temporarily yesterday because of a potential significant air attack. In the end, no missiles landed yesterday, but Ukraine accused Russia of a psychological attack.
We are very worried, yes. We want to live in peace.
After more than 2.5 years of war in Ukraine, the scars in this country cut deep.
It can happen any minute, any hour.
Major Taras Berezovets of Ukraine's territorial defence told us Russia is blackmailing his country.
Putin is trying to frighten Ukrainians into surrendering.
Absolutely. Trying to make the conclusion that any sort of opposition to Russian invasion is absolutely useless.
Some believe that both Russia and Ukraine are trying to maximise their gains before President-elect Donald Trump takes office. There are fears here that Trump could cut US support for Ukraine. Gail.
Holly Williams in Ukraine, we thank you.
Topping our world lead, a never-before-used new Russian missile carrying multiple warheads was fired at Ukraine today, and it was not just a weapons test, rather a blaring signal to the West and to Ukraine that while this one was not strapped with nuclear warheads, the next one, well, could be. Russian President Putin emphasized this point by celebrating the new missile's, quote, successful launch. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh reports now for us from Ukraine's capital of Kyiv as Putin tests the world's limits.
A familiar horror, but a quite different sight on Ukraine's skyline. Multiple projectiles at 5 a.m., apparently from one missile hitting an industrial site in Dnipro city, suggesting, as Ukraine reported, Russia had launched a new type of ballistic missile, perhaps intercontinental, a stark escalation.
Today, our crazy neighbour has once again shown who he really is and how he despises dignity, freedom and human life in general, and how afraid he is. He is also so afraid that he is already using new missiles.
CNN obtained these exclusive images of the missile debris, Ukrainian experts poring over the pieces to determine what this new threat is. Little dispute, it was something new. The Kremlin kept silent during the day, bar this bizarre episode at a foreign ministry briefing that spoke volumes.
Алло. Да, у меня брифинг. Да, хорошо, спасибо.
Perhaps a trailer for Russian President Vladimir Putin's big reveal. He said the missile was a new hypersonic non-nuclear device called the Hazelnut. There are no means to counter such weapons today, he said. The missiles strike targets at speeds of 10 Mach. That's 2.5 to 3 kilometers per second. The modern air defense system available worldwide and the US-developed missile defense systems in Europe cannot intercept such missiles. This is impossible. He framed the strike as a response to American and British-supplied missiles, ATACMS and Storm Shadows, slamming into Russia proper over the last 72 hours. We consider ourselves entitled to use our weapons against the military objects of those countries that allow their weapons to be used against our objects. And in the event of an escalation of aggressive actions, we will respond just as decisively and in kind. Yet Kiev was yet more on edge when the sirens sounded Thursday afternoon. A US official insisted Russia had few of these new experimental missiles, and it had warned allies about the strike. It's unclear if that led to its embassy shutting suddenly a day earlier, citing fears of an aerial assault. Russia sending a clear signal, but now not with a test like this. In 48 hours, it's made a nuanced change to its nuclear doctrine and launched a new missile. Total silence so far from Western leaders, but the blast was heard across Ukraine.
Now, Jake, I think some of the uncertainty about exactly what this missile was that's echoed throughout the day has contributed to the anxiety felt certainly here in the capital and across Ukraine. The Russians, the Kremlin head Vladimir Putin, keen to project technological prowess, to suggest that there's still a military superpower that has tools in their arsenal they haven't yet, even 1,002 days into this war, reached for, and that the recent escalation, they say, by the Biden administration has made them do something extra. Their assessment too that they think they can get through all the air defences of the capital is going to leave many Ukrainians concerned tonight. And also I think Western officials perhaps thinking when they saw this that they knew partially what it was, able to say some things, not wanting to say other things, and perhaps not knowing other elements about indeed what this missile may be capable of. The fact we're talking about new technology now, this far into the war. So
I'm confused. The West believes that Putin is a madman devoid of reason. Why provoke him with newer, more powerful weapons? Do they not care about a nuclear holocaust? No, they don't care about a nuclear holocaust happening on Ukrainian soil. Watch this space. I told you this years ago when John Kirby came out and said, "Oh, if there's a nuke that is deployed, it'll only be in Ukraine and it'll just be like a tactical nuke, a baby nuke, okay, a mini nuke." The thing is, this is where America's interest in Ukraine matter. If their goals are earnest and interested in genuinely trying to defend Ukraine or ensure that no more Ukrainians are harmed, okay, they would have probably allowed Ukraine to have more weapons earlier on to launch better defenses, and then two, immediately gotten every party to the table, including China and Russia, with the Ukrainian upper hand to put forth the third Minsk agreements. Of course, it's still Putin's responsibility if he launches a nuke. He is a fucking madman. He is a violent, barbaric, bloodthirsty madman. I mean, so is Biden, but that's besides the point. It doesn't matter. What you fail to consider is that if there is no real interest, and if Ukrainians are treated as disposable, then it doesn't matter. America will slowly but surely be like, no, you can keep escalating. You can keep escalating. These escalations in defense of Ukraine have to be productive if they are going to actually change the tide of battle, because the Ukrainians do have a right to purge the invading forces from its national boundaries. I don't see a way out of this that is good for the Ukrainian people, especially at this point. I mean, Vladimir Putin is basically dry firing nukes to demand Ukraine stand down and not use Western weapons inside of Russian boundaries. Do you think Israel will be abandoned by U.S. like Ukraine? No, absolutely not. Israel's a 76-year project. There is way too much investment in a resource-rich region. Our interests in Ukraine have remained for quite some time. I think like the first iteration was when George W. Bush on his way out floated the idea of Ukraine and Georgia being welcomed into NATO. Why is it okay for Israel but not Russia? It's not okay for Israel and it's not okay for Russia. It's not okay for either of these parties to engage in the violent acts that they're engaging in. In the eyes of America, one is justifiable and permitted and also encouraged. The other is, of course, the most unacceptable act. Both states are engaging in unjustifiable atrocities. But if you're wondering, will America abandon Israel? No, they won't. Israel is far more important to America's strategic interests in this resource-rich region than Ukraine is in terms of crippling America's foreign adversaries. But like I said, America never has and never will have a real emancipatory interest in Ukraine. Their goal is simply to use Ukraine politically early on, and then to use Ukraine militarily against Russia's, against the foreign adversary's military. And it's not like I'm making this up or speculating on this. This is something that Lindsey Graham has openly stated. This is also America's tool in its tool belt. They did this with the Kurds. The difference between Ukraine and Kurdish militias, however, is that there is no established Kurdish nation state, 35 million living in diaspora, whereas Ukraine is an established nation state with sovereignty being passed around within the sphere of Russian influence and interest and in the sphere of Western influence and interest. So now we're going to take Lindsey Graham seriously? Okay. If you don't want to take Lindsey Graham seriously, what about Elizabeth Warren or Chris Murphy? They have also said the exact same thing as Lindsey Graham. American foreign policy is uniparty. That's why politicians agree on Israel, and that's why politicians agree on Ukraine. There are some naysayers who at least try to present themselves at politically at odds from one another, like when they say we shouldn't be doing any war with Russia in Ukraine or whatever, but it's true. Yeah, Blumenthal as well. I just use Lindsey Graham as a person to quote because he was so obvious and so open about it. But many other Democratic Party politicians have said the same. Israel
certainly suggests that the last 4 or 5 days have begun a new chapter, really. I think in the standoff between the West and Russia here, and also for the misery of Ukrainians dealing with nighttime barrages almost daily. Jake?
All right, Nick Payton-Walsh in Ukraine for us. Thank you so much. Stay safe.